Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the return of Be the Flame, where fire and magic meet. I am your host, Amy. Very excited to be back here today because we are kicking off a brand new season. This is season 4 of this magical podcast. And today we're going to have a really wonderful time together because we have a very special magical guest. And I can't wait for us to dive into today's topic. If you will recall, if you have been a past listener, first of all, I want to thank you for supporting me during the pause and the hiatus, which has been, just about 2 years now. A lot of stuff has happened in all of our lives, not just my life, but I'm sure in yours as well. So the journey we always take together. So I am looking forward to reconnecting and reigniting the spark of this magical sacred space. And, as we keep on track with things and we stay on course, one of the first things I do when I open up every episode of the podcast is I make sure that we all take a moment so we can ground and center ourselves and open up this sacred collective space. So if you are home, I don't recommend you do this while you're in the car and you're listening because I want you to keep your eyes open. So if you're at home, you can ground and center yourself. Just take a moment to sit somewhere comfortably and place your feet flat on the floor. Do a little bit of earthing and connecting ourselves to our grounding energy. And I want you to take just a moment and remind yourself of a thing or two, or maybe more than two, of things that you're grateful for. And I know for me, the thing that I'm most grateful for is that my eyes opened this morning and I have the gift of another day to be on this planet and share this space with all of you, okay? And then on the count of 3, I want you to draw in a nice deep breath for a 3 count. And then I want you to exhale that nice deep breath through the mouth. Okay. How does that feel? That feels really good for me. And I'm coffeeed up, so I feel an extra burst of energy today. So one of the things that I love to do on this podcast is have guests. And of course, one of my favorite guests of all times is the wonderful, magical Dr. Shadia Koury of Chiropractic for Life. She's not only an amazing doctor of chiropractic, but she's an amazing human, and she shines her light so bright in this world, and she's also a great friend. So without further ado, I welcome you, Shad. What's up?
Thanks, my friend. It's always an honor to be here with you and work synergistically together with our magic.
Seriously.
We both enhance each other.
We do. Yes. So I was just looking back through previous episodes, and we did our very first episode together of Be the Flame back on February 23rd of 2021. So that was the Reiki Bridge. And then we came back and that was COVID. That was COVID episode. Mm-hmm. Then we came back and did COVID 2.0 back in the summer of 2022. And now we're here and it's 2025.
Look at this.
That's
Absolutely.
Wild. Yeah.
Look at this. Yes.
And you're older now.
A little bit. A little bit. I'm trying to catch up with you.
Yeah, well, yeah. I know. Before you arrived, I had my my red light mask on. Right? So I was cleaning up and I had my red light mask on, my anti-aging red light face mask that I use every day. And I'm like, oh God, I hope she doesn't knock on the door and this is still going. But But yes, thank you for coming back and kicking off this brand new season. I'm extremely excited. We're a little older. We're a lot wiser. You've been doing a lot of traveling, which makes my heart so happy that you're seeing all these different parts of the world.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I always say when you travel, you take us along with you. So that's also wonderful too. We get a little piece of that.
I absolutely do. And I always bring a little something back for you guys too.
Yeah, really interesting, bottle opener.
I'm not talking about the material stuff.
And some really great chocolate, which we just finished, and because we savored it.
Yes.
We didn't go through that as quickly as we would with other pieces of chocolate that you bring us. But yeah, I'm glad you're doing all the things. Mm-hmm. I'm glad you're doing all the things. So we're going to talk about a really great piece of our bodies today, and that's the vagus nerve. And
when in Vegas.
I know, when in Vegas.
Why not?
Why not? So The vagus nerve is extremely important, and I'm going to let you dive in and explain a lot of that to our listeners, and for me too, because I always like the education part. But the way we're going to bridge this is the vagus nerve, dysfunctions of the vagus nerve, and how that trickles down to dysfunction and imbalance, body, mind, and spirit.
Yes.
All right. So
Yes.
walk us through an explanation of the vagus nerve and what its importance is.
The vagus nerve is probably the most important cranial nerve we have within our nervous system, the brain being everything. And there's a lot of communication. And the vagus nerve, it carries both the sympathetic and parasympathetic fibers. And sympathetic is your fight or flight response, and parasympathetic is your rest and digest response. And so we need to have a nice balance.
Right.
We need to be able to have a response to stress when we are in a threatened or dangerous state. So that's where the fight or flight is supposed to kick in. But if we live there for too long in that fear state, then it's going to inhibit parasympathetic, and we could end up where we're in a freeze state if it's way too long.
Yeah.
And then the nervous system has no response and no proper response, I should say.
Yeah. And we see that a lot.
Yes.
Doing the type of work that you do and the type of work that I do, we can really extract perspective on where people are in their day-to-day life.
Yes.
Based on how their nervous system is operating, right? It's clearly not optimized. It's one thing for us to recognize it, but it's different when we see it in another. When you are working with patients, practice members, are you seeing a lot of vagal nerve dysfunction, and do you think it's expanded since COVID?
Yes, that is an absolute yes. It's something that us chiropractors have worked with for a long time, as well as other magical healers.
Yeah.
Because we want to eliminate that stress on the nervous system. And there's things that as adults we can do. However, when you have a child, that child is now picking up the perceptions of the adults in their world.
No.
You know this. You see this.
It's hard.
And it's not always because the child is like that, but what did they pick up, whether it was in the womb, or what did they pick up that was intergenerational?
Yeah.
What mom's perception was, what dad's perception was. There was a great study, the cherry blossom study, where they but they released the smell of cherry blossoms in a stressful state. And they measured these stress responses. I think it was mice that they did it on. And it was interesting because it passed down from 14 generations, that stress response. Each generation, more and more. Every time they smelled a cherry blossom, they became stressed out. What's interesting, though, is they did this from the paternal line, from the fathers.
Okay.
So they weren't even carrying these babies.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's not just mom. There's dad, there's grandma, there's grandpa, there's the siblings. There's so many dynamics in that family culture. And so we have to, the babies don't know how to regulate and look to us to help them regulate.
Right.
And if we can get mom, because essentially she is the number one caretaker usually, then if we can get her to help regulate her nervous system, then that's only going to trickle down to the babies.
But here's the thing. We know that mothers are the primary caregiver. They're also the primary decision maker.
Yes.
When it comes to stuff like this.
To health, absolutely.
Right? So therein lies another challenge. Because if they're the primary caregiver and the primary decision maker when it comes to health decisions.
Yes. Right. And so from their perception, if there's fear there, how likely are they going to want to make those necessary changes to help balance out that family unit?
Correct. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen it over the 17 years that you and I have been associated with one another in this working environment. And parents, a mother will bring their baby in or their child in, and you can see right off the bat where the thread is or the vein of nervous system dysfunction,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And it's always presented, well, now that you are acclimated to our practice and now that you see how it goes with your child, maybe now it's time for you to come in. And I always love to see the response in a mother.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Because
because,
then you'll see the changes within the children as well.
correct.
But vice versa sometimes too. When you can help calm the baby down if they're open and give you that permission and they want that help, if that baby's open, you will see those very subtle changes in the mom too, because as baby regulates, then the mom doesn't keep going into those downward spirals. When baby's in a stress situation, mama gets stressed, and they just keep feeding off of each other. That
Right.
changes that.
Right, but
But it's also very important too to help mom learn those tools so she can then pass down those tools.
exactly.
And not just mom, it could be dad.
Exactly.
It could be the other partner in the relationship, whoever it is that's helping to raise the children, whatever the dynamic is in the household.
Well,
And you and I have been around long enough now that we're seeing the third generation and we're seeing the fourth generation in some
yes,
families
I know, which is wild.
and some repeated patterns.
Yes. Yeah. And, that's where the power, I will always say, as long as I have breath, that it starts by saying yes. And the yes can be the conversation.
Yes.
The yes can be going online and reading the information. It's very simple.
Yeah.
It just starts by saying yes to what is possible in terms of my health and well-being or my child's health and well-being. And the alternative side of things are now becoming more front and center, where we weren't seeing that as much even 5 years ago.
Correct.
And now we're seeing that, some people who want to use their health insurance, if they are fortunate enough to have that, that some of these alternatives are now available through FSA or their flexible spending accounts, their health savings accounts. That plan administrator is not going to reject it to the same degree or depth as they once did.
Correct.
So we are making strides, but there's a lot of work that still needs to be done.
Yes, there is.
And that's why, you see a lot of people going out of the country for healthcare or in alternatives to chronic illness or disease that we can't find here,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
I was in a
Yes.
I was in a bookstore in downtown Portland a couple months ago, and I struck up a conversation with a woman looking through the cancer, the cancer care books. And we started talking, and she said she's from the state of Oregon. She did not support the course of treatment that her oncologist was recommending. She wanted to integrate and blend alternatives. That doctor said no. So she had to go out of state. In this case, she went to Carson City,
Interesting.
which, is the capital of Nevada.
Yes.
So she found an alternative clinic there, and she got, her treatment on track. And she's doing really well. She's thriving, which I love hearing these success stories. But that was an out-of-pocket experience for her.
Yes.
And so,
We lead the world in education when it comes to the medical world. We lead in technology, but yet our mortality rates are absolutely
it's in the
horrendous.
toilet.
Yes.
Our mortality rate is in the toilet.
Yes, it is.
And we're number one in creating pharmaceuticals.
Oh, well,
Right?
it's a billion-dollar industry.
Right,
I
but-
mean, we could go a
mean,
lot on the pharmaceutical
We
industry.
rule the world in
Absolutely.
that realm.
Follow the money, as
Yeah,
we
you gotta
know.
follow the money.
We know.
So I always say, let's start by saying yes. I mean, what's possible for you?
That's
and
right.
Your family.
And it could just be little steps. It
I
could
know.
just be take a walk 20 minutes a day.
Yes.
It could just be have one organic meal a week.
Yes.
It just little baby steps will take you further and further and further.
Or reducing your screen time.
Oh, that's so important.
Not taking your screens to bed with you.
We know
at
that,
night.
yes.
The importance of that.
The brain is not prepared for all of that stimulation.
No, and especially in our children.
Correct.
So no wonder
Even
we
more.
have an anxious generation.
Yep.
A lot of that is contributed directly to exposure to screen time. So what happens? We get into this uncomfortable comfort zone, and that leads us to complacency, which, was one of the things that, hit me yesterday. I'm like, oh, we become complacent.
Yes.
And how does that level of complacency affect our health and well-being? And where is that in the brain?
So complacency is usually because we are fearful to make any changes.
Yeah.
The nervous system is in a constant fear state. So either we're in a place of love and growth, or we're in a place of fear, possibly complacency, or possibly even going backwards.
Yeah.
And so we want to keep our environment safe. What feels safe? And so we keep everything on the external the same. Because I can wake up every day and I can have my coffee and I can wash my dish and I can watch TV and I can scroll and I'm home and I'm safe and I don't have to deal with anything else in the world. And so we're scared to do that. And so when our nervous system perceives this threat or this danger, it comes into the brain. It goes into the emotional centers, your limbic system, the amygdala specifically. And if you stay stuck in that amygdala, then it shuts off our front part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is our higher functioning, executive functioning, making our decisions, proper motor response, how to react properly.
Okay.
And that's where it gets shut down. It's an overdrive. The amygdala has now taken over the brain. So you're now basing everything off of emotions.
Yeah.
And then what feels good, what feels safe for you in that moment and keeping you out of danger.
Right. But that really blocks the ability to make rational logic, that rationale and logic is now gone sideways.
It has.
As a result,
That's the prefrontal cortex is about rational decisions. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's neuroadaptability. Things happen. How do we respond to them?
Yeah.
And then how do we adapt and change to it instead of staying stuck in it? Overreaction.
Yeah.
Right? We have to learn how to respond, not react.
Yeah. And again, that takes us back to what you said earlier, and a lot of that's generational.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We didn't start the fire, as the Billy Joel song says. It was always there. It's just that, are we strong enough to say no more? And it stops with me.
There's a great book that I just got on loan, and I have to start it, but it's called "It Didn't Start With You," and it'll give you some great insight as to where a lot of our patterns have come from.
It's kind of scary when you look at it on that, because it's such a magnitude. It's on such a scale that, and no wonder someone would get overwhelmed with that,
Yes.
right?
You have to go deep, deep within yourself.
Yeah.
And that's another part of vagus nerve is that connection of your inner self.
Yeah.
Because it goes to your organs, it goes to your gut, your solar plexus, your inner knowing, your identity, who you are. And when we've lost that connection, we don't know what to trust anymore. And we don't trust our own selves first and foremost.
No. And that was a lot of what I was, dialoguing about last week, because, it was, Valentine's Day on the 14th. And, we're all about the softy side of it, the candy and flowers and the red hearts. But, it's like, red's not the color of our heart. It's green.
That's correct.
And, that green, that heart space is our halfway point, as above, so below. So it's connecting the physical world with the spiritual. And when we have imbalances in that heart space, it creates a whole host of issues and challenges.
Yes, it does.
Especially in the realm of trust. And so when we don't trust someone else, if we have trust issues with others, how are we going to have trust of ourselves?
Well, usually the deep core issue is trust within ourselves first and foremost.
Correct.
So you start to perceive everything else around you as either a lie or a threat or dishonest in some way.
It's all dangerous.
Yes.
And that's how our growth is stunted.
Yes.
Right? And I mean, gee whiz, as old as we are now, why? I question a lot of why when and let them, right? Let's quote Mel Robbins, because we're reading the book and it's like, let them. that is their journey. I've learned that it's not only their journey, but it's perhaps their karma, that this is what they have to sit in. But it's so easy for you and I to look at the potential and possibility in countless others.
Yes.
But it's more of a challenge to see it within ourselves.
That's exactly right.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, you've been a doctor of chiropractic for a long time now.
25 years.
Wow.
This is 25.
25 years.
Yeah.
I'm sure you still have those thoughts like, can I really do this? Or,
Of course.
Those.
The cases have become more and more difficult as our world has evolved, as stress has evolved,
Yes.
as our sensory stimulation has become way over the limit.
Yes.
And so there are people that come in and it's, and I question, is this somebody I could truly help?
Right.
And then we just get back to the basics.
Yeah.
Let's calm that nervous system down and then just watch them flourish if
Yes.
they're ready for that.
Yes. And I think and you can say that in the world of chiropractic. I can say it in the world of pediatric Reiki, working with children and their mothers. It's about being ready. It's not about just saying yes, but it's saying yes and then being open to the
Correct.
possibility of what
Correct.
can happen as a result.
And that's why you have to meet them where they're at.
You got to meet them where they're at. But if there's not consistency, then it's really all for naught.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
You could have a new family come through the door and the child has torticollis. Let's use torticollis as an example. Or a baby with reflux.
Yes.
Let's use reflux. That's easier for people to understand. Once that baby is stabilized, that doesn't mean that the baby shouldn't receive ongoing care, right? Because that
Correct.
baby's changing and growing at warp speed. You blink and they have developmental changes in the brain,
Yes.
right?
The optimal neurodevelopment period for a child is up to 3 years old. And our nervous system is so brilliantly designed that it actually prunes off those connections that we no longer need, and it keeps the connections that we do need for our evolution. And so by putting good, healthy input into the nervous system, you can literally change the trajectory of that child's development.
Okay.
So chiropractic adjustments provide that. Reiki can help with that.
Yes.
We have all of these body workers that can help change these things. And so we specifically will look at these milestones. Are they doing their tummy time? Are they bringing toes to nose? Are they sitting up? Are they standing, walking? What do those things look like? And we don't have to put them on a certain time frame. There is a general guideline. However, each child is a little bit different, but they have to meet these milestones in order to integrate a lot of their primitive reflexes
Yeah.
in order for their brain to be opened to growth and evolution. Breastfeeding, I always forget to mention, breastfeeding is probably the first most important thing for a baby to receive, and the birth process, a good, healthy, gentle birth process. Mom not being in stress as well too. I'm going backwards now here.
Yeah.
So prenatal stress is important because that cortisol that's released in mom, it does cross the placenta. And now the baby is bathing in this cortisol soup. They're perceiving the world as dangerous as well. So they come out already scared.
Oh.
So when we're in this fight or flight, the nervous system wants to prioritize our survival organs, such as our heart and our lungs. It doesn't want to prioritize digestion. And so reflux truly is, there's no stomach acid coming to the stomach to digest the foods. And when you have that situation, once the food then gets to the small intestine says, hey, there's no acid in this food. Stomach make more acid. That's when the stomach makes the acid. So the
Okay.
true cause is low stomach acid. And then the side effect is that reflux.
It's the reflux.
Vagus nerve controls that. Vagus nerve also controls down the shutting of the muscle, the gastroesophageal muscle too, that allows that milk to come up, right? That shuts it down. So there's a lot that can happen, a lot that we see. So yes, reflux, we fixed it, they're doing great. However, what is this child still perceiving?
Right.
So we still have this window of giving it a good, healthy introduction into the world, so then they have a healthy perception of their environment.
And this is just looking at infants,
Correct.
right? So now
Correct.
we when we see children that are toddlers starting kindergarten, on up through high school,
Even more.
Their perception of the outside world and all the static that they're bombarded with, no
Yes.
wonder there's vagal nerve dysfunction,
Yes.
right?
We're just, and that's the thing, is you keep putting in that unhealthy sensory input,
Yeah.
and then now we have generations of people with panic attacks, anxiety, depression, and now we're seeing a lot of these mental disorders that are occurring younger and younger and younger.
Yes.
Because they're so bombarded, that load that they keep taking in, the way our world is developing.
Yeah.
It's a lot on the nervous system.
Well, and no wonder it's birthing this overload of chronic disease
Yes.
in much younger people.
And so it's much easier now to change children, of course, than it is adults. And so that's why we're on this path of, let's change this generation, let's change this generation. And there's so much we can do in a child so we don't continue to see these chronic diseases show up later in life.
Yeah, I think that's the scariest part for me, is to see these people younger and younger presenting with a host of chronic illness.
Yeah.
And, how did we get
It's
here?
sad, yes.
How'd we get here?
Yes. Recurrent infections, autoimmune in the children. This was unheard of.
I know. And just living off of antibiotics, it just seems that,
Yes.
so many of these kids are constantly in urgent cares or at their pediatrician for another round of antibiotics. And then they wonder why there's antibiotic resistance.
And so that microbiome is so important, because it's actually the microbiome that communicates with the vagus nerve to the brain.
Yeah.
And now there's more and more in the neuroscience world showing that we actually have a microbiome in the brain.
Yeah.
We are surrounded and within our system with bacteria and viruses that we do need.
Yeah.
Germs are not bad for us. It's when we have an imbalance that now things get thrown off whack.
Yeah. It's just a whole different world than 5 years ago.
Easily.
It really is. And
Easily.
And I don't like always lumping things, tying it back into COVID, but you can't ignore it. It's just,
No,
you can't ignore it.
I joined a neurodevelopment program back in 2020, 2021. And my mentor, Dr. Monica Berger, who is like on the cutting edge of the neuroscience world and how chiropractic affects the brain, she said, watch what's going to happen with these kids that are coming into this world when we are in a pandemic. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we're seeing that.
Yeah.
And so like I said, when that cortisol release, crossing the placenta, baby now perceives the world as a threatened state. We had a lot of premature births, right? The babies didn't have a chance for their vagus nerve to completely myelinate in the womb to the level it's supposed to in the womb. And then when they came out, mom stressed out, inability to make enough breast milk to feed the baby. But here was the key thing that we just started seeing over the last few years is you need that proper sensory input to get that proper motor output. Vagus nerve being essential because it carries both. Speech, suck, swallow, breathe. I can't tell you the influx of infants that I got that were having trouble with breastfeeding on mom, or even just with the bottle.
Yeah.
Vagus nerve controls that suck, swallow, breathe reflex. And then the speech pathologists, we now have many going to school because there's such a demand. Here in Vegas, there were people on the wait list for 6 months. In other parts of the country, it was taking up to 2 years for speech therapy.
Yeah.
Because they're delayed.
Delay.
Because it affected their nervous system to that level.
Yeah. Well, and also too, they were born, they had no FaceTime because people were masked.
That was another thing.
That was another big issue.
So social engagement when a baby is born is so, so important. They learn from our facial expressions.
Yeah.
All of it. And the only thing you see in eyes is fear or happiness. But you need the full realm of the face to be able to see all the other emotions.
Yeah.
And that being part of it, so that's why breastfeeding is so, so vital to the baby's developing nervous system. But we call this term brexting, and it's when moms are breastfeeding and texting at the same time. This is the most important time to put the phone down, first of
wow.
all, so the baby doesn't have EMF exposure close to its head,
Yes.
but also for mom to have that eye-to-eye contact, because then it releases oxytocin in her, it releases the oxytocin within the baby, and they're building that bond. And it is so vital for the nervous system, that social engagement. And that was another thing, is the kiddos came out delayed in social skills.
Yeah.
The amount of adults that I saw that developed this extreme social anxiety and had a
Yes.
hard time getting back out in the world.
And OCD.
Once things, we were released that things were safe.
Yeah.
And the OCD and all these mental disorders, again, it is just improper input and perception of the world.
Yeah. I saw a lot of the OCD,
Yes.
those types of behaviors
Yes.
started to shine through.
Because all they could do was control their
Control their
environment.
environment. Yeah.
They couldn't control what they were feeling on the inside.
No. Yeah. Great stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. So, what would you say, from a chiropractic standpoint, is the best way to address an overstimulated vagus nerve?
So the type of chiropractic that I practice is very low force. And we recognize that when people come in. As you said, we can right away tell. And so the last thing you want to do is overstimulate that nervous system even more. And so these gentle techniques that you and I both practice will help for that nervous system to start to build the connections so it is much calmer and it is more in a parasympathetic state.
Yes.
Those are important. And then suggestions I always make at home is the connection with the baby. When we talk about tummy time, it's not just to build the strength in the baby, but I want mom and dad, the caretakers, down eye to eye with the baby, because there's so much importance in that connection that they're having in the bonding to make them feel secure in the world. Other practices, I always tell people, and this is my favorite, when the weather's great and the grass is green, go walk in the grass.
Yeah, that's
barefoot
we
in
love
the
that.
grass.
Yeah. Little earthing. Never hurt
Earthing,
anybody.
That's what helps connect you back with nature.
Yes.
And that is so great for the parasympathetic nervous system. Hugging a tree.
Yeah.
Gardening outside. Anything that, camping, anything that gets us back into nature.
Yeah.
Hands in the soil. Belly breathing is so important. Vagus nerve passes through the diaphragm to get to the stomach, right? And get to the intestines. So belly breathing will help expand that as well. Humming is great. And there's a little technique too where you could put your tongue between your teeth and hum. That helps to stimulate vagus nerve. There's so many things to do. And just what makes you feel good.
What makes you feel good.
Play that calming music at home. You and I both play a lot of frequency
A
music.
lot of frequencies.
Within the home.
And I tell a lot of families, I'm always texting them with tracks of binary beats off
Yes.
YouTube. And I'm like, these don't cost you anything.
Nope.
So let me share something that you can play. And I tell them, it might sound like white noise because it's tonal, it's layered sounds. I said, but you could have it on the lowest volume setting and it still
Affects your brain.
affects
Yes.
the brain in a
Yes.
positive way.
Yes,
So,
it does.
essential oils, infusing aromatherapy, with
Yes.
sound therapy, with time in nature. There's so many things. That
Yoga and meditation.
Yoga and meditation, breath work,
Breath work. I do breath work every morning before I start.
and laughter.
Oh, that is so important. And that's
Right?
the connection.
Yeah.
When you're connected more with people, then
Yeah.
yes, you will laugh more for
Yeah,
sure.
I mean,
Yes, it
laughter
does.
is so important
Yes.
for our overall well-being. And I think, people need to get back to that and go to a comedy show or watch something on TV that makes you laugh.
Yes.
Or, and even the ability to laugh at ourselves
Yes.
Right?
That is important.
and
yes.
not taking things so damn seriously.
Yep.
Because there's enough serious stuff floating around us all the time. Let's add a little levity
Yeah.
where we can.
Yes.
And that shifts our frequency as well. Yeah, this was great. Yeah, the vagus nerve, great topic for today. Super, super important. I know you're always educating families on the importance of a optimized not only nervous system, but the importance of the vagus nerve too.
Well, I guess we can sum it up and say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So what type of patterns are you going to put in your vagus nerve?
That's a really great way to, kind of shift into, closing out our topic for
Right.
this episode is, what are the inputs?
Exactly.
What are you inputting into your,
Yep.
vagus nerve?
It's going to stay there.
And it's going to stay there. Every single thought that we have, we're like a computer. It's encoded into the framework of our entire being.